That's a good look. If I ever did that, that's the look I would go for.
The other guy is a guy who takes no prisoners when it comes to sports.
Let's stomp these dudes.
Together, they bring you the best in Oklahoma State sports talk and opinions on sports from around the country.
That's right. Listen up. Hey, listen up. You.
It's Jason Elmquist.
Today, I'm a mild-mannered reporter for the newspaper.
And Patrick Wheeler.
I'm a very dangerous man.
This is the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
That's what I'm talking about. Sport.
You ain't never heard nothing like this. Let me work. Show me where the mic is. I'm on stage, black shirt and my Timbs. You know how I do it. I ain't playing with you. I've been grinding. Anybody trying to sleep on me, better do something with your eyelids. I hear a lot of whining, but I don't hear a lot of rhyming. Whoa. Everybody got opinions. Let it go into my ear, then I block that. Put me on stage, I'ma rock that. Saying you the best. Stop that, phony. I am not that. Yeah. What are y'all doing out here? What are y'all doing out here? Maybe you should spend a little less time with the women on your arms and a little bit more with your career. I ain't saying I'm the best, but I should be in the top 10. Give me a list of names. I'ma top them. I'm just playing with you. I don't care what the top is.
And welcome in. It's the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network on a crazy Monday. Patrick Wheeler here with you. Jason Elmquist joining shortly. It has been a crazy weekend and it continues to be a wild Monday in the world of sports, especially college sports, especially college football. The nuclear news over the weekend. And it moved in such a fast pace that it was actually difficult to keep up with at one time. It still kind of is, with everybody saying this and that and this and that about whether college football is going to happen or it's not going to happen. And to kind of give an outline of where we're going here, Jason and I are going to break this down. You know, it's going to be a smart, intelligent conversation here about this. We're going to break this down. And then after we get through our segment here talking about this, phone line's going to open them up. And I encourage you to call in, tell us what you think, because I like hearing from listeners about big topics like this. But give us a little bit of time here, and we're going to get everything out there, and then feel free to call in. But first, it's picking a starting point here, Jason. As I was just saying, this weekend, it's been pretty crazy. I think the MAC obviously set things in motion when they said on Saturday that they're not going to have a football season. And then people immediately thought, well, our Power 5 is going to follow. The rumors were the Big Ten for sure was, the Pac-12. Dan Patrick reports this morning that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 will come out tomorrow and say that they are canceling football. So everyone's eyes are now on those, the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC. Where are we going to be? Look, first of all, I'll say this. This, to me, seems like a big opportunity, once again, for the Big 12 and the SEC and the ACC. Because what the Pac-12 and the Big Ten are doing, mainly the Big Ten right now, but the Pac-12 will follow. So what the Big Ten is doing to me is trying to get it out there and see if other Power 5s will follow in the idea of let's cancel. Because the initial report was they want a unified vote from everybody. They want all the Power 5s on the same page on this. And I immediately thought to myself, there's no way that you would get a unified vote on this. Did you ever? I never believed that for a second, right? No. Especially from the SEC and the Big 12. If the Pac-12 and the Big 10 do what they do, fine. But even at this point, I would think the ACC might find a way to try. We'll get to all this later about the response that we've seen from players and everything too. But I believe a lot of this was for the Big 10 to get out there, say what they say, and see what kind of response they get before making a decision. Do you think that too?
Maybe, but at the same time, Big Ten, we talked about how, the Big Ten, jumping the gun with going to 10 games. Well, you know what? Now everybody's doing 10 games, except ACC's got one more. But they started the shift when it came to the amount of games. So
are they trying to do that again? Is that what you think?
Well, no, I'm not saying that's necessarily. I think it's they're worrying about themselves. And I think that's how all of them are probably doing it. But it's just who's worrying about what. And that's the argument you see all over the place right now is, I know some people arguing the fact that, athletes would be safer on campus anyway. It's like, okay, well then just because there's not athletics doesn't mean you can't still ask them to stay on campus. Right. I mean, if that's that's your whole argument of keeping them safe is because you're going to keep them in this structure, well then keep them in the structure then still.
that's the thing, is how many would even want to be in the structure still. You know?
I mean, a lot of them, obviously, because a lot, the other aspect of this weekend, yesterday, is all the elite athletes tweeting out the "We Want to Play" hashtag.
That's what Jordan and I were talking about it earlier. I've seen it made, the point asked and made too, is, but if that were the case, if there were no athletics, do those players still get tested as much as they do? Do they still get all that and as part of it, or is it just, now you're a student and we have nothing for you? You know, so I don't know where that answer lies either. But I think Kevin Warren, Big Ten commissioner, has not done well with all this. I say that because he dumps out the schedule recently, right? And then 3 days later comes out with this.
Well, but I think, like we talked with basketball and ultimately, I think now with football, I think MAC is what ultimately is. If MAC wouldn't have announced that over this weekend, I don't think, because that's the thing, is if you go back to all the response after the MAC stuff is when it was we're going to lose college football altogether. It took somebody to be the first conference to do it, and it just happened to, the timing just set up to where, yes, Big Ten's going to look bad because, well, you just announced, but at the same time, it's fluid. I mean, we've all said this. It's a fluid situation. I mean, just it's similar to what Bowlesby said, and it's not even a month between gold news being gold and suddenly being a turd. I mean, literally from day to day almost. I mean, yesterday it was we're going to lose it. Now it's just these two conferences are going to cut it, and now we're getting politicians involved. So it's like, maybe it's like, between, I think John Hoover, a friend of mine, used to work for the Tulsa World, he works for Sports Illustrated now, put it perfectly. He goes, I have an interview at 1:30 and then a doctor's appointment after that. He's like, I can only imagine how things are going to change just in the next 3 hours. And that is the case right now.
We are moving along with news all day and all weekend, and it looks like tomorrow will be a big day as well if everything goes through on what possibly the decisions could be. But if the MAC were that in, like, it seemed a little suspicious how quick it was that the Big Ten rumors followed. Like, the MAC canceled, and it was like immediately, the Big Ten is actually going to do the same
From what
thing.
I was reading into it, it was almost we just need someone to take the brunt of being the first conference. And it almost feels like the presidents of the Big Ten, because again, based on the reports this morning, it was a 12-2. It's not a split decision. I mean, it is a strong 12-2 decision. So that makes me think that they already were looking for a way to cancel the season, and the MAC kind of opened that opportunity by them being the first ones to say we're canceling.
I think they're doing a disservice to their own schools here, mainly because of the decision making that's going on. Okay, because Big Ten players, like we just said, as of last week, we're getting things ready to go. We're getting back into the groove of things, got a schedule out. And then 3 days later, it's, we were actually probably going to cancel. And they're all like, wait, what? Like, what is going on? You know, they are 1 day here and they're 1 day there. So that's where I feel like that. And Kevin Warren, I think off the top of my head, if I remember right, his son plays at Mississippi State, I believe, in the SEC. And he said the other day too that he's fine with his son playing college football this season. Like, so this reversal, I think, is what's frustrating to a lot of people, especially in the Big Ten. They can't. We've talked about it a lot with this leadership stuff. Well, what kind of leadership is this if they can't get a solid answer that changes all the time? Right?
What's going to be the storyline then when all conferences cancel?
Look. That's what I don't think is going to happen, though. I don't.
Because here's the thing. Here's the reality of it is that all we're talking about is the start of the season right now. Obviously canceling, and obviously that's the big story. But here's the thing. Right now, if you come down with a certain amount of positive people on your football team who test positive, not just in Big 12 or Big 10, all the country, all the conferences across the country have shut down programs if you hit some magical number. Okay, what happens if that happens in the middle of the season? And I'm sure that's what some of the presidents are probably looking at is like, okay, if we can't even do it now when there's no students on campus, when we're not having games, when we're just in our bubble, how can we successfully have a fall season?
That's why in the SEC, they ultimately, when they decide September 26th, it's let's get our kids on campus and everything. Let's get it going and see what happens with that. Like, that was part of their decision making.
But at the same time, you've wanted people during all this people to be proactive instead of reactive. That's, in my mind, that's what the Big Ten's doing. They're being proactive, whether we like it or not. They are being proactive compared to other conferences right now, which is something we've been critical of the current situation.
Proactive or overreactive? Because,
again, like I said, how is it overreactive if you think that there's a good chance that you're going to have to shut down the season anyway? Because everybody's having to shut down.
Yeah,
practice.
But we've seen this, like in the SEC, I think it was the Big Ten too, right? They built in these couple of weeks, these couple of bye weeks in case they have issues. Because if that were the case, and they have a breakout on their team or whatever, it's not going to last like forever, right? It's going to be over in a week or two. So if they get that and they can build in those weeks,
unless you have more people test positive during that time. That's the thing. There's so many unknowns.
There is,
and I think that's why, because that's the thing is we got to, as much as people don't want to think about it, it's all business. It's all business.
It is.
And sometimes you have to hedge your bets and say, okay, are things trending where it could all backfire on us? And if some enough of the presidents for the Big Ten believe that that's the way it's going, they're voting that way. And that's the thing is, like, it's just like somebody putting money down on the stocks. If something's trending downward, they don't just hold on to it until last second. They dump when they feel like it's best time. And Big Ten apparently thinks this is the best time.
I don't know exactly what all they're basing it off of. Okay, because to me this is a transfer of risk situation. Okay, when you get the players acknowledging, you get politicians acknowledging, a lot of people acknowledging that it's safer for these players to be playing football.
No.
We've made that clear. Like, that's out there. So telling them, no, we're not going to have a season, and sending them away, that is transferring risk.
And I'm going to go political here for a second, because keep in mind, you just complained about the fact that within a 3-day window they changed their mind from, they had a schedule to now they're canceling it. Okay, what about the fact that we've had a government that said this is all imaginary, this is all a hoax, we don't need to do masks for 5 months, and then suddenly flip the switch, like, okay, we need to do this, we need to have masks, we need to do this, that, and the other. If this would have been taken care of, not just federally, every state would have taken this seriously from the beginning, maybe we could have had a season. Maybe MLB and NBA could have been starting earlier than late August.
Right, but the fact that, just like you mentioned, all these major sports are finding ways to play. Okay, we're about to have high school football.
We also have players' associations that allow that, and that was the interesting thing with the players, the college players.
Yeah.
Is them. They want a players association now, and that's a scary thing for and that might actually lead to us having a season because of a fear of, well, if we don't play, they have even a stronger urge to unionize, essentially.
Right, but major sports find a way to do it. Okay, we've had youth sports this entire time in a lot of places have been going on. Baseball, we've had football games, whatever. High school football is about to kick off in a lot of states. I mean, if we are able to do all of this, and to me, I don't know how you justify not having a college football season.
But at the same time, it's a case by case. It's not every state's coming back.
No, but a lot of them are.
For example, Stillwater High volleyball was supposed to open the season tomorrow night in Ponca City. Mm-hmm. We were just informed that actually has been pushed back to next week because Ponca City's volleyball team's having to quarantine.
Right, but they're still planning on having it.
As of now. Yeah. But that could change within 3 days, and then we're going to roast them too, right?
No, we don't roast them. Why would we roast them?
Because we just roasted the Big Ten for switching decisions.
No. The Big Ten has, what they're doing to me is like I said, putting an opportunity out here to transfer risk. And what I mean with that is the commissioner, the presidents, we talked about liability a lot. Like, that's what it is in the grand scheme of things, right? They don't want to be liable for these situations, which I don't even know how that's as big of a deal as it's played up to be, how you would be able to prove that you got coronavirus playing football for a school.
And see, this thing, I haven't heard enough out of the Big Ten to know if that's their whole reasoning. If, again, it could be
we wouldn't know if it's their reasoning, right, because they would put it behind it's the health of our student athletes that we're looking out for here. That's what they would. Well, we would never know.
But at the same time, I think it's beyond just the health of their student athletes. I think they also have to keep in mind the general public as well. Because again, I don't know how many of those Big Ten conference schools are going online only. I think Ohio State was to start.
I think the 13 out of the 14 are going to have on campus learning. So
to start off with.
Well, I mean, to have school. So 90%. you got them all there except for one. That's another part of it too. Is you're telling me that we're going to be able to have kids on campus?
Oh, we're not going to for very long. I don't think so.
Okay, but we are to start. So
to start, yeah.
You're telling me we can go ahead and try that, but we can't even try a football season.
And that's this is an argument that I've made with you before. I think a large portion of them trying to get kids on campus at first is the money grab. It's all. I mean, just like the same reason that Mike Gundy said we need to get players on the field is the same reason presidents are thinking we need to get students on campus. It's all about the dollars.
It's very possible that they could be like, you know what, like you said, tuition. We want to make sure they start paying for that, right?
Yep.
When you look at it from a conference standpoint here with the Big Ten, okay, because to me the Big Ten's going to make a decision, and if they say no football, I have to believe the Pac-12 will probably for sure follow. Now they're supposed to meet tomorrow. It came out today that the Pac-12 is going to meet tomorrow. With the SEC and the Big 12 and the ACC, the response has been so against it in such a way that we haven't seen yet from a lot of silent people that have come to finally to a point where it's like, got to say something. We've seen a lot of them come out here, and it comes to the point where it's like, will these schools even attempt to grab players that might not get a chance to play?
Right.
Let me ask you this. How, to me, dumb would it look, okay, if the SEC and the ACC and the Big 12, or even just two of those conferences, are able to play a full season, even if they were to add teams or whatever, and they go off without a hitch? I'm sure there'll be some issues here and there with some teams, right? But they have a pretty successful season, whatever. They're able to get through it, bottom line. How dumb do the Big 12, the Big 10, and the Pac-12 look sitting over here going, well, we didn't think we could do it?
But again, it's also regionally based. I mean, because again, remember, Big 10 country was some of the biggest impacted through all this as well. But the fascinating thing, though, is, talking of leadership, speaking and whatnot, you had the SEC commissioner came out, tweeted out a release, essentially, but he made an interesting point that I think we all have to keep in mind. We may all look back a month and a half from now and realize, okay, well, there's no season anyway. Because even the SEC commissioner asked, basically in his statement, are we going to have football this fall? I don't know.
Right. He said, I don't know, but he also preached what he's been preaching this entire time, which is patience.
Right. I know. Yeah. But and that's the thing. That's why, and if Tom were here, he'd bring up the whole why you don't, get away from the NCAA and try, because, certain teams will control the narrative. Well, and that's where it is. We're at now is Big Ten and likely the Pac-12 have their own narrative. They don't want to potentially do it. And again, we don't know the stance of the other three conferences, but by end of September, that could change.
That's why I'm saying that the Big 12 and the SEC and the ACC have another opportunity here to say we don't care. Like the SEC,
but at the same time, they also have the same opportunity of coming out looking like idiots. Of why'd you even try this? That's it. There's two ways to this.
Based
not just
off
one.
of a lot of response and the players' response and politicians' response and the president's response to this now. Who would be the idiots? I mean, to me, it would be like, hey, at least they went off and tried this thing.
Even if you had to shut down after one game, if you had a player death from COVID-19, they're not idiots.
The chances of that are, I know they're there, but they are so minuscule.
But there's still that chance. And
there's a chance for a lot of other reasons for students to die playing football.
But this is one that you can slightly control by keeping them off the field potentially. Because that's the thing. Tyler Wallace literally said last week, yes, we know that if we play, somebody's going to get, it's going to spread. We know it. If the players know it, then the presidents should know it, and then that's where they're making these decisions. If they have that same thought process, the Big Ten presidents saying, yeah, we think that it's going to spread, well then, yeah, because that's the thing. I think you brought up the liability thing. I bet if the presidents and the universities were allowed to do those waivers, then I think maybe they would go through with it. It's like, well, then liability's off our hands.
Right. No, they would. They would, but with the risk and all of that as well put in there like you just talked about. Okay, we've seen a lot of schools, like they had positive tests initially, but we've seen a lot be able to control this thing too at the same time. Michigan's one of them. Oklahoma's done a fantastic job this entire time.
Yeah.
Notre Dame. You go down the list of schools that have found a way to control this. So it is possible. While, yes, you get someone like Thailand's like, hey, it's going to spread. Like, okay, but we all know that there's a way that it cannot spread, right? And that's dependent on them.
Right, but the problem is it's not every single Power 5 conference team is having success. If all of them, then yes, I would agree with you. Make that argument, yes. But not all of them have had that, even within each conference, have you been able to say, okay, KU, Kansas State, Oklahoma, all of them, everyone's had zero or hardly any.
No,
that's not the case.
No.
And that's where presidents are having to weigh things. Is even though Oklahoma State, we believe we've had X amount of success. Well, we saw how bad things got at Kansas State. Do we really want to risk our guys playing against them because they can't control things within their own conference?
Yeah. But schools are going to be willing to bring students back on campus and put them all in one environment and shove them in dorms and classrooms and all this too, and still say, well, we tried. And you're saying that's all from a money grab. There is what you think.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've seen some of the buildings on campus. I've talked with some people who either are or know professors or teach up at OSU, and the lengths they are going to just to try to get people on campus. There's some. I know one professor who's actually just with only 29 kids in her class. But they're having to go online because they can't even find a room for 29 kids to socially distance properly.
Right.
And that's just one professor. Imagine all the other professors across the country or across campus that might be having that issue, or across the country and stuff like that. But yes, I think it's a lot of it is we got to get the money in, and then we can make our moves to whether or not we're going to just shut down and send everyone home, stuff like that.
Well, then see that there needs to be some more focus on that instead of the focus we always have of presidents and ADs and whatever exploiting college athletes.
Oh,
Are
no,
they not
I know.
doing the same thing to students, right?
No, I know. That, again, that's why I'm bringing it to light. That is a problem, but that is also our current business model across the country.
Right.
I mean, how many businesses are exploiting their customers and their employees to make sure that the profits are still marginal and up there for their CEOs and all that stuff to be able to, their board of regents, all that stuff to make their money, while people are the frontline people at Walmart and the grocery stores are the ones actually sacrificing everything.
Yeah. Well, when we come back, we are going to get into some of the player response, because that's been the big topic of how players have responded to the news possibly of no college football season. That's next.
Well, I'm not trying to get in the way. Minding my own, got nothing to say about nobody. That's right, nobody. Don't shake my tree, don't rattle my cage. You and me will be on the same page. Got no trouble, don't make no trouble. Yeah, you best let a sleeping dog lie.
Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist as we dive into this college football craziness that is surrounding us and everybody in the sports world right now. As many people are sitting on pins and needles wondering what in the world's going to happen when you would get to this point somewhere along the line. And I think this is about the right time. A couple of weeks into August, here we go. It's getting a lot closer. We got to start making decisions. And that's where we are. I think it was after what the MAC did and news about the Big Ten, we see the social media movement brought on by college football players with the hashtag #WeWantToPlay. Trevor Lawrence was really leading that for Clemson, which, ironically, he's the guy that doesn't even need the season virtually at all.
Yeah, he'll be the number one even if they don't play.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I think was so big about it, because it would make sense for guys that need the season to play, But for someone like Trevor Lawrence to be like, I'm going to start this even though I have no incentive to do so, let me go ahead and start that up. His tweets to me, he brought up points that I know I've been saying for a while, and that includes this right here. People, this is his quote, his tweet. People are at just as much, if not more, risk if we don't play. Players will all be sent home to their own communities where social distancing is highly unlikely, and medical care and expenses will be placed on the families if they were to contract COVID-19. Not to mention the players coming from situations that are not good for them, their future, having to go back to that. Football is a safe haven for so many people. We are more likely to get the virus in everyday life than playing football. having a season also incentivizes players being safe and taking all the right precautions to try to avoid contracting COVID because the season teammate safety is on the line. Without the season, as we've seen already, people will not social distance or wear masks and take the proper precautions. He's saying right there in that end part, look, if you say no to if we say have no college football season, a lot of these guys will just go back home. Okay, they'll go home, whatever, and then the virus ultimately spreads, possibly even worse, because you don't have, like you said, the medical professionals around you. You don't have the constant testing. These guys, most likely, not everybody, but most likely, if they get it, will be asymptomatic. Well, no. They go around and they transfer this virus all over the place. So I think there is a fair argument to be made there that, look, we are actually safer. And that's what people are trying to get to the Kevin Warren, the Big Ten, is like, that's where the whole transfer risk argument comes from.
Right.
Is we think that we're proving to you that it looks like it's actually safer to be where you are right now. If we're not, to us, you're putting that risk on the community.
And maybe that's why, on the flip side, the Big Ten possibly has some bad, I guess, connotations of their decision making. Maybe it's a case of, well, if they're going to get it, we'd rather them get it at home so we don't have to pay for it because we can't afford it right now. We can't afford the testing. We can't, like, in bad faith, that could be what they're doing. I mean, it's very possible because, like you said, we don't know what they're thinking. Maybe, again, the logic is that. But if you're also thinking of it that way, you could be saying the Big Ten's making this decision because then they're not liable if one of those guys do come down with it. If they get it at home, because it's that's your fault instead of getting it during football season.
I honestly wonder, because we bring up the liability talks all the time. I honestly wonder, and I would have to talk to a lawyer or something about this, how easy it would be to try to hold a school liable, but then to actually go through with it and prove it in a court of law. It's like how is that exactly? It's easy to say, but how doable is that? Is it enough to where these schools are really that afraid? I mean, it's possible.
Again, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, I need it.
But at the same time, I would think it would be pretty easy because that there's a possibility of them coming down with it during a game. It's a possibility, and yet you still threw them out there. Yes, that then you're complacent, and that would, I would assume, bode well for if you wanted to have a liability suit against the university.
You're not going to. We were talking about players getting tested all the time, though. So you're not going to go on that field, right? With the positive.
And that's the interesting thing is, I think what we're also missing out in all this is even in that we want to play, we're United graphic that was sent out. Even the players are bringing up. Apparently, there's not a national or a specific mandate of how the testing is going to be done across the country. And again, that's a problem.
Yeah, I agree. There needs to be that. They need to know when they're going to, because it needs to be consistent. When they're going to get tested, what days, right?
And again, that's part of the problem, though, is that's what needs to be done. But then on the flip side, you have to sit there and say, who's paying for it?
I would think.
Is it going to be universities who are already hurting because of what's been happening? Is it the NCAA because technically because technically the universities make up the NCAA and they should have money to take care of the student athletes because that's what they claim is their most important goal?
Let me ask you this: do colleges go as desperate as if they say they were running low and couldn't afford testing as often as they want to? Do they go as far as cutting a couple sports, try to save some money?
We're already seeing that anyway. Yeah.
Right. So I think drastic measures could be taken.
I think when you also hear the growing reports out of Colorado State, probably also would cause a little concern for some presidents of wondering, is that happening within our conference or even on my own campus as well? So that's because, again, that's something we had discussed even ourselves of, are there possibly going to be some coaches who put pressure on these athletes?
Yeah, I don't know how truthful that story is because we've had so many of their actual student athletes make it a point on social media that never happened and that they never felt like.
But over the weekend, they have actually expanded the investigation.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
hopefully we find the truth out.
Again, I always say when there's smoke, there's fire. Again, whether or not it's a big fire or a little fire, it remains to be seen.
Yeah. So So Justin Fields was a part of it. Trevor Lawrence, Chuba Hubbard here at Oklahoma State was a part of it. D. Anderson, I know, was another one.
Derek King from the former Houston quarterback, now at Miami, was as well.
Apparently, from a report was that Trevor Lawrence actually reached out to Chuba Hubbard and said, I want you to be a part of this because he's such a big part of college football as a whole.
Right.
And he, obviously broke his Twitter hiatus to go out there and put that out. Many politicians have joined. President Trump tweeted the same thing, quote tweeted Trevor Lawrence, said the same thing. I thought this was interesting from Ben Sass. He is a United States Senator in Nebraska, actually wrote an open letter to the Big Ten presidents and basically said, look, this is why we need to play. One line kind of got me here, and it's what I talked about with the whole risk thing. He said, here's the reality. Many of you think that football is safer than no football, but you also know that you will be blamed if there is football, whereas you can duck any blame if you cancel football. I mean, I feel like that's a huge part of it. I think he nailed it on the head right there. What's going to happen is that SEC commissioners, you're going to have Greg Sankey, you're going to have Bob Bowlesby, you're going to have maybe over in the ACC. I don't know how the ACC will react, but the Big 12 and the SEC for sure. When I say have an opportunity here, that opportunity also involves taking some risk. And I think at this point they're willing to do that.
And to chime in from Tom's point of view real quick, we have to keep in mind it's not the commissioner's decisions. It's ultimately going to be the presidents in those conferences
so
who make that decision.
We'll talk about influence from them to the presidents. That's going to be their case.
No, not influence. It'll be their vote.
No, I know, but I'm saying for what they have to say to them and try to persuade them is look, this is why we need to do it. We accept some risk here, and that means having a college football season. And it's been made, I think, extremely clear that players, for the majority, as we speculated, all offseason, want to do this. They are willing to go out there and get it started.
I'm not going to say all. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say all. There's not all. But from what we've seen on this movement and how quickly it caught fire on Twitter, it seems like there's a lot of voices out there, especially big names that want to get this.
Because we got to keep in mind, I saw another person has said that they're going to opt out. I think the number I saw was over 30 now who are opting out of this upcoming college football season, quoting concerns. And again, I'll be curious if there's more, maybe, and that may just be the 30 that are, NFL prospects type of guys, so that those are the only ones that people are actually paying attention to.
That's the only reason I buy. And instead of the only other reason would be if you're a college student athlete and you have a serious underlying condition and don't want to put that at risk.
Well, and Tylen Wallace brought up a good point because he was asked about those who are sitting out, and obviously he said he's wanting to play. There's a reason he returned for his senior year, but he even brought up, he's like, a lot of these guys also have kids, newborn kids. You don't want to risk them possibly contracting it as well and possibly, being impacted for their entire lives and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's so many layers to it. And, yeah, I mean, it's a case now where do we see, and I think I even brought it up last week, do we see mid-game or mid-season athletes possibly backing out? And that's, I think, another thing that presidents are going to have to look and keep in mind.
I could see that making more sense than opting out at the beginning, because if your reason is, I want to do it as a reason to get into the draft and get myself prepared for the NFL, and you actually have the legitimate chance or know for sure you're going to the NFL, some of these guys do, then that I completely understand. But if you don't have any underlying conditions and you are straight up saying, look, I'm just worried about the coronavirus, that's fine. You can feel that way, but I don't really see how you justify, like we've been talking about, not being safer amongst your school and team than out there on your own. Because by that logic, to me, it's, okay, I'm afraid of the coronavirus, but doesn't that mean that person needs to go quarantine this whole time until there's a vaccine?
And I mean, again, maybe some people have been doing that. I mean, when you're a college athlete, let's be honest, you can't go to a job, you can't go work, so yeah, you'd probably just be at home likely anyway. Again, I'm not saying every one of them is. There's probably some that, again, like MLB guys decide, I'm going to go hang out at the bars and stuff like that. And again, that's something that I think presidents have to keep in mind as well, is the comment that I said last week. If we can't even get adults who are being paid millions of dollars to stay in a hotel room to just stay there, how are we expecting college athletes to? And that's, again, I think something that they're having to weigh in mind in this vote as well.
No, I agree. I think that's a huge, and to me, I've even admitted that's the only worrisome part of me that exists is Not sure how these guys will take it serious. But if you look at it from this point, with everything that's happened this weekend alone, and the Big Ten actually threatening enough to where it seems real, like it seems like the college football season is hanging by a thread here, does this wake up some of these guys that had intent on not taking it serious? Because if they get this opportunity, it's clear to anybody right now, they can see where some conferences are thinking about heading. And even if they don't head that way, you have to understand they could flip the switch in any moment. And that could be as a result of a small amount of cases, too. I'm sure, look, with Kevin Warren, what he's done so far, I'm sure it wouldn't take a lot for him to go, we got to stop. So if I'm a college football athlete right now, and my intent was, I can probably get away somehow with this. I can probably go party, do whatever. And even if I do found out I have coronavirus, I get past it, so what? Maybe this is enough to switch that idea in a lot of guys' heads, especially at programs that have a shot, or Power 5 programs, because this is a weird year, right? I think that's open in a lot of conferences. I think it really is for a lot of different teams.
Yeah.
And so if that were the case, if I were a student athlete, I'd say to myself, look back at this when the season starts, we were this close.
Yeah.
Like, it got real for a second. Let's focus on this.
But at the same time, having talked with a lot of college athletes over the years, I think you also have a large contingency that's going to look at it as they're just taking more of our independence from us by trying to make us play through this and having to sit in our hotel or our dorms and blah blah blah. That's the thing, is like, we got to keep this in mind. There are 100 kids per team per football program, and not every single one of them is going to take the same mindset of, okay, if we're going to play, I cannot do this, I cannot do this, cannot do this. It's just not reality. I mean, it's the same. It's the same reason that we couldn't have a mask mandate as in the state or in Stillwater. It's because some people just aren't going to pay attention to it. Don't care.
To me, and I think just coaches too, it'd be like, it's worth the risk of at least trying, telling our guys, look, you got to stay, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to follow the guidelines. It's worth giving it a shot.
To quote Mike Boynton, you can tell an 18 and 19-year-old kids to not do something, but they're still going to find a way to do that.
No, and with everything thrown in that I've talked about before, the amount of testing that is done. We know there's a lot of testing going on. If you have the coronavirus, you're on a football team for sure. Pretty much everywhere in athletics, but football team for sure, you're going to know. So with that thrown in there, with the movement that's taking place in a very large, maybe not majority, but a lot of players are backing this up, and big-time names, with the push from politicians, when the president takes notice and tweets about it. I mean, go down the list of how big this is to a lot of people. Yeah. Maybe it's enough to actually push it over. I'm not saying it would. Yeah. It could be.
I agree with you, because I actually had somebody ask me, and I was like, with the politicians getting involved, there is a good chance that it'll force conferences to, Big Ten and Pac-12 to rethink or to actually try to start a season, because again, the worst thing you want to do is to make an enemy of somebody who has the power to make things difficult for you, whether right or wrong. Politicians have that possibility. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing that those presidents might have to keep in mind and rethink their 12-2 vote for the Big Ten, is because now the politicians are getting involved. We've seen it with Major League Baseball. Once politicians got involved, they finally cleaned house in baseball.
Yeah.
NIL. Government's starting to get back involved with it again, and NCAA's having to reel from that. And that's the thing, NCAA's been able to skate by on the fringes of not being, not having the government's, push back too much on them. But this could be a breaking point where government politicians obviously are starting to say, hey, no, we got to go forward with this.
I think it's certainly possible. I mean, it's being proved that it's big enough of an issue that a lot of people in power are taking notice. When we come back, Jim Harbaugh has something to say about his conference, talking about no college football. That's next, and we'll also take your phone calls.
I don't wanna wait for our lives to be over. You have it, but you take it how you left it. This is give and take. Take your side, take me under. I wanna know, but you show me what I'm missing. In the play down in Southern California.
It's the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist wrapping up hour number 1. We'll open up the phone lines now. 533-1020, 533-1020. That's a 405 area code. and you can call in, tell us if we should or shouldn't have a college football season, and we'll see what you have to say. First, though, let's go to the phone lines. We already got a call. You're on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Go ahead.
Hey, let's play football. But you guys, you got to help me out on this one.
Yeah.
I can't figure out. I just can't wrap my head around why OU sent their team home. To me, I can list about 20 reasons why you shouldn't do that, and maybe one why you should. Have you guys talked about that? I've only listened parts of it. Have you guys talked about that? It's my understanding they sent all their kids home last Friday for a week. Is that true?
Yes, that's what's being reported.
Their rosters from Texas, California, Vegas, you name it.
Yep. Yep.
Could you guys talk about that a little bit, and I'll hang up and listen, and maybe give me some insight as to why you would do that?
Yeah, thanks for
Appreciate the phone call. I believe some of it is because of the fact that the reason they were already in practice is because they were believed to be starting at the end of August. And I believe Lincoln Riley said that the reason they're shutting down camp is because now obviously they're not playing when they're supposed to, and obviously you're only allowed so many days of practice. But yeah, as far as sending them home, yeah, that's something I question as well. It's like, yeah, because again, to the whole argument, you literally spent 2 weeks of quarantining them before you started, the voluntary stuff in the middle of July. Are you going to ultimately have to do that again? I don't know when OU's school starts, if it starts on next Monday like OSU, so you let them go home for a week to see family and whatnot. But, again, that goes back to then there's the chance of risking of them coming down with it.
Yeah, we saw a lot. There's been a number of different schools that have actually paused or stopped practice, especially in the Big Ten, just because they're waiting information. Like you said, only a certain number. But yeah, to OU hadn't got to that yet. I had seen it, and it didn't make any sense to me in terms of, to me, it's a mistake, honestly. I mean, I think if you're going to send, and I kind of thought to myself too, is this a bad sign? I mean, does OU? That's what
maybe Lincoln Riley thinks that there's no chance of having a season, so let them go see their family before school goes.
I hate to think that. But I didn't really know how else to justify sending everyone, like the caller said, back to all these different states. Some of them still have some hotspot areas, and then expecting them to come back because OU this whole time has been, we've had zero tests, we've had zero positive, we've had zero, this is asking for it. So I don't really understand the whole send them back home thing unless Lincoln Riley knows something we don't, which I think by now we might have had a leak or something, but who knows? I mean,
I will say he would know more than we do.
No, he would. He would.
That is for sure. Yeah.
No, it's just like I'm surprised.
But yeah, that may be a bad sign that if that is why he's letting them go home.
And I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I'm really trying to justify it any other way, and it's not easy to do. Okay, let's go back to the phone lines. You're on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yep. Go ahead.
Hey, Patrick.
Yeah. Yes.
Hey, dude, you are awesome. I love listening to you every single day. I got a question for you.
Sure.
Some of these athletes go to school on scholarships for athletics because, not all of us can get there academically. They go on athletic scholarships.
Right.
So what is your take on this if they don't have a football season? What happens to those guys that are there on scholarship for football?
Yeah.
Hey, great job, by the way. I love listening to you. You're so knowledgeable, and you do a fantastic job.
I appreciate that. I mean, look, when it comes to the scholarship athletes and everything, when they're straight on, like part of my reasoning here was even like what Trevor Lawrence said. Look, these guys, if they don't have a season, a lot of them are going home. Okay, straight up. Coming in on scholarships for athletics only, right? So we also know at this point too, like if you opt out, right, you still have you still get to keep your eligibility, right?
Right.
Have we seen anything to where if there's no season that is
not
rolled
that
over?
I have, but that was part of the kind of the I don't want to the desires of the We Are United, the We Want to Play thing was questioning, they want a stance on eligibility if there is or not a season.
To me, they were still kind of left in the dark in that situation because there were, like we said, the assurance that if you opt out, you for sure will be able to keep your eligibility here. But if we have a no-go on the season, I would have to think that they would find a way to toll these over right into the next season, I would believe. And then it's almost like a situation with the spring athletes. You can come back or not, right? I would think that probably would be the case. Yeah. But yeah, to me, I think like what she brought up there is kind of a point that Trevor was trying to say, that Fields was trying to say, is a lot of people like us and everybody has focused on, what will happen to these guys that go back health-wise. But just like they were making the points of football is the escape for a lot of us, it's the structure for a lot of us. You send guys, I'm not saying this is a last chance you situation, but you send guys back to wherever they're from, the likelihood of them getting in trouble increases, all this stuff too. I mean, this is their home. I think people have to understand that as well.
Well, and I think the caller kind of brings up a question that I kind of had posed several months back of, okay, if you're an athlete, if you're a college football player and they cancel, let's say you're a Big Ten athlete, well, why should I go to classes? Like I go to classes so I can go play football.
Right.
So what do you do? Do you potentially see a influx of these athletes saying, well, then I'm not going to go to class if there's no reason for me to go to class?
I think there would be a lot that would have that stance of why do I do this when I'm not even getting to do what I came to school for? Because bottom line, look, you're going to get your number of kids that came to school to also get a scholarship, right? Even the big time, to get an education. Even the big time players that are going to go to the NFL, a lot of them we still see, you get your perfect, it sounds weird to say this, but your perfect guy, like in the football scene, like the Trevor Lawrence, right? It's always GPA is perfect. He's getting this crazy degree here, and he's also the number one pick in the NFL. Well, it's that case for some people, but for a lot of them, and we've seen this before too, it goes kind of back to the NIL thing. If they're not seeing any benefit from playing football, then that's a part of what he's saying is I'm gone. Yeah. And what does that result for these guys in the future? Are they ultimately in trouble years down the line because they say, look, I didn't want to do this because my football season was 100% canceled?
Well, and that again, we got to think about, like I said, all these athletes don't have the same mindset. Because what happens also, I've brought this up as well, is if you try to have a season and they cancel the bowl games. Well, that was supposed to kind of like football is, you do academics so you can play football. Well, you play football so you can go to a bowl game. Right. What happens if there's no bowl games?
Look, I said, and I'm still kind of in that same boat here, I don't see a lot of bowl games taking place.
I don't think so either.
I would be very, very not surprised at all here if we ultimately had the 4 bowl games that led into then the playoff that led into the championship game. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of cancellations.
And that's something we maybe have to keep in mind with what the Big Ten's thought process is behind this. Is we're not going to be able to have fans in the stands. We're not going to go to a bowl game because we would get a lot of money by going to bowl games. So if we delay their eligibility to the spring and try to get it then, we can maybe we'll take a monetary hit now. We'll make that up because we'll be able to have fans. We'll be able to go to bowl games in the spring, in theory, and stuff like that. Yeah. So maybe that's part of the process as well. I mean, there's so many layers to this, and that's the thing is like, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't, no matter what. Because that's the thing. You're going to get some people who, with the Big 12 and the SEC, if they go forward, and then they have to shut it down after a game or two, and it's like, well, why'd you even start to begin with?
This was an interesting point from Jim Harbaugh. The Big Ten has obviously been the topic of controversy here. And according to Dan Patrick, Michigan was not one of the 2 schools that said they want to play. It was Iowa and Nebraska. So you get Jim Harbaugh basically going up against his school here, and he gives out this statement of, look, I'm with my players, looking that we can control this virus and play. And he said he's basing it off of these facts. I'm not going to name them all because there's a bunch. But the first one, Michigan football program has had 11 positive tests out of 893 administered, including 3 upon initial return. We have had 2 positive tests of the last 417 administered. We've had 0 of the last 353 administered. Like I said earlier, they're one of the universities that has no more positives going on right now and actually have been taking it serious. There's been no contract tracing to their fields, weight room, locker room, facilities, all that stuff. No pauses in their training. They followed CDC guidelines. He's naming all this stuff. He said, this wasn't easy. This isn't easy. He said, this has been extremely hard. And I can imagine with a football program his size, with kids that age and do what they do, this has been extremely hard. But it has proven that it can work at some places. I think that's what's going to bother teams like this the most, right? A team like Michigan, who did everything right in the offseason, and the numbers are proving that, if their conference says, no-go, they're like, well, what did we do all this right for? And at the same time, does that give the SEC and the Big 12 an opportunity to grab those teams? Because to me, it's like, let's just do a mega SEC or Big 12
That's going to be the
conference this year.
fascinating thing. If they try to do something like that.
Would you be surprised if that happened? If the SEC said we're going to add teams?
Because I don't know how you can legally do. I don't know. That's because that's the thing is we see it in wrestling. Big 12 has affiliate. Obviously Fresno State, Wyoming, Air Force, stuff like that are technically Big 12 affiliates in just that sport because their conference doesn't have an actual conference wrestling.
Right.
So if for 1 year a conference doesn't have a football conference, are they going to be allowed to affiliate with some other conference for that year? I don't know. It's unprecedented. I have no idea.
It is. We saw the ACC do it with an independent and Notre Dame, but grabbing from another conference. I mean, it's seeming like it's doable in terms of, for instance, we saw Ohio State already say on Twitter, they're like, some of their coaches, well, we'd be ready to go. If the SEC said, come over here and we're able to do it, we're ready to get over there. And that to me is going to be the case, okay? You may get the occasional school. I'd actually be interested to see if the Big Ten shut it down, how many, if not all of them, would say, can we go to another conference if they get clearance or are allowed to? Can they do this? Then is it possible to even think that every single one of them would at least, or a big majority would?
Yeah, because I think I've heard reports or rumors, speculation that Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, and Nebraska would be four that would want to to play
for sure. And then I would have to think
Nebraska's already straight up said we want to play.
Right, Nebraska's said it, Michigan's now said it, Ohio State has said it. If others follow and there's an ability to do it, I will say this: if the Big Ten ultimately does what they're talking about doing, and maybe even the Pac-12, but the Big Ten for sure because they have better teams, if they are able to get over into different conferences, you very well could see a Michigan and Ohio State, a Nebraska, or Penn State. I mean, you go down the list of guys the teams that might be in the SEC or the Big 12.
But again, we also have to keep in mind is Ohio State and a Michigan, their coaches may want to do that. But if their president just voted that we're not going to have a conference season,
right,
I don't see them allowing them to go play in the SEC for the year.
They're going to have to get clearance from that. That's going to be their obstacle.
Yeah.
And I like you said, I don't know. That's going to be where are these presidents' heads at? Because right now it seems like they are hell-bent from the reports we're getting that we can't do this. And yet you get others and other conferences that have actually come out and said, we're still waiting. We want to make sure we get all this as in-depth as we can, as late as we can, really, to be honest with you. But, so it's kind of all over the place still. When we come back in hour number 2, we're going to start off, take more of your phone calls in hour number 2. I'm going to tell Jason what my solution is to this year and even next year for some of these college football players if they are told they can't have a season. That's next.
It's been a too long time with no peace of mind. I'm ready for the times to get better. I've got to tell you, I've been racking my brain, hoping to find a way out. I've had enough of this continual rain. Changes are coming, no doubt. It's been a too long time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. You seem to want from me what I cannot give. I feel so lonesome at times. I have a dream that I wish I could live. It's burning holes in my mind. It's been a too long time, no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. It's been a too long time, no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better.
Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. It's hour number 2. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist. I have a solution I'm going to get to here in just a minute with what there's a big opportunity sitting here for college football, and even past that. There's a big opportunity. Because with players saying what they want to say here, they're getting their word out there. They're talking about let's form a union, which I think is like Jason said, a lot of ADs, presidents, schools' nightmares to see that officially occur, if possible. But that was definitely one of the ideas, was let's unionize here. Let's get a players' association. There are schools that are shaking at the thought of that idea. But here's what I see as an opportunity. First of all, with conferences and schools, if they don't listen, if they don't listen to their players are saying, let's say the ACC says no season, and they ignore what Trevor Lawrence said in the ACC at Clemson. If that's the case, future recruits should take notice of this, okay? Future recruits should take notice of this. Part of the reason why is they should look at this and say, okay, our voices truly don't matter. And even though it was in a pandemic and all this, like, that was probably, this might be the biggest come-together moment we've seen in college sports. And if this doesn't change the minds, I don't know if they would necessarily change the minds or persuade or push in a different direction, then future recruits need to notice this. And you know who else needs to? The XFL. And they need to take big time, because they're the next G League. Yep. Okay? They need to take an opportunity here with the startup, again, of the XFL. They need in 2 years. They need to get out there and say, look, and that would be a huge reason of mine, is if they went ahead and canceled it, I would say, they don't listen to you over there. We'll listen to you over here. Oh, by the way, we'll actually pay you money. You come over here, you get in your season, you have a real shot at the NFL too. You don't have to you don't have to go get an education, unless you can go do that. Hey, they could even do like the G League and set up a program where that's available.
Where they'll pay for that as well, yeah.
I think the XFL has a huge opportunity here to reel in some big-time names that we would otherwise see at big-time schools, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's certainly possible. They need to take advantage of this time, but that's if colleges ultimately... And that's why I believe, like, players' voices matter, but I think we're going to see really how much here, because if somebody like Trevor Lawrence and we're talking the biggest names in college football. Yeah. This isn't your third-string quarterback.
The three names you just mentioned off of Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Chuba Hubbard, those are your right now. If you go look at your Heisman odds, those three are your top 5 right now.
Yeah, and one tweet that was important, another player that came out, past player, Joe Burrow, came out today, and this was his tweet. I thought it was pretty important. He said,
that was a good one, yeah.
This was good. He said, I feel for all college athletes right now. I hope their voices are heard by the decision makers. If this happened a year ago, I may be looking for a job right now.
Yeah.
Like, how sobering is that?
Right.
I mean, seriously, the first round overall first pick and then draft is like, look, I might be looking for a job at Walmart or something right now if it weren't for what was going on. So I think that's huge, but the question is, do colleges and commissioners really care, honestly, right? Because they could go through with this and say, no, we're not going to do it. And people would cry and say, look, you're not paying attention to the players. But how far would that go? Would the players ultimately try to officially form a union? Would there be a lot more call for we need to separate and then form our own deal? I mean, the possibilities are endless, right, at this point?
Yeah. Well, and I saw, I think it was a column or something like that, that's one of the fears if they don't have a season. Of not only do you upset them because, they're coming out saying they want to play, but... Well, now you give them more free time to unionize, to get together, to, now that you're seeing Trevor Lawrence reaching out to Chuba Hubbard, and it's like, okay, next step then is if there's no season, well, let's get together and let's, meet with some lawyers. Let's figure out how we can, create a players association, because they literally did, that is one of their mandates, if you will, at the end of their we want to play is we want all this health stuff. Oh, we also want to have a union now.
And look, I'm being honest here. I think a lot of top dogs in college football especially went, oh crap, we might have just done it here. And maybe that's part of the reason they're telling their guys, their presidents, look, we got to play.
Right.
If anything, look what will happen if we don't. We're looking at a chance here, and with name, image, and likeness coming into play, I mean, all of this is a nuclear bomb for college sports if they don't get it going, which I think also we got to remember and remind people, this isn't just football at stake here. all college sports are pending on what happens with football. They are down the drain, and that to me includes college basketball, which you've agreed upon as well. There's no way. I mean, there's been talk about, look, we're going to have college basketball. The NCAA has even said we're planning on starting on time, right? We've heard that before. Well, with this being everything that's going on now, you think they would really go through with that if football were canceled?
Yeah.
We're talking about possibly, because I am not a firm believer in spring working for college football and anything. We don't know where we're going to be in the spring. You know, like I told you, it buys time for people, but we don't know where we're going to be. We're certainly not going to have as much talent in football, especially in a lot of other sports too. So I don't see spring working. To me, it's a scary thought to a lot of people around here too, but it's a real possibility that if this doesn't happen, we don't see college sports until the fall of 2021.
Yeah.
That's going to ruin some schools. Right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, plain and simple.
Oh yeah.
They had
some schools, some athletic departments.
Yeah, athletic departments.
Obviously,
for sure.
a lot of sports programs would. I mean, this is literally what we discussed back in March.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. Is we've had 5 months to try to fend that off, and what do we find out? That apparently we're not prepared.
Right. We, it's encouraging, I think, to see, and then that's again where my worry is. We've seen some numbers, for instance, in Florida have gotten better. Arizona's gotten a little better. Texas has gotten a little better. We're seeing these numbers be, increased to the spot where it's like, okay, we maybe might be able to do this, that. But at the same time, it's that idea of when we bring in all these kids, how much can be sustained of the spikes that are going to occur at large campuses? Because that's where I think we all hinge on too, is like we talked about when we do say, if they say it's a go. Well, that's why the SEC starts later, and we see if at Alabama that Tuscaloosa has to shut down the town because there's how many college kids back, and we got coronavirus all over the place. So that's the only thing you have to be able to manage, I think, as much as possible. Again, can you manage enough to say that feel good about having a season? A lot of people are asking the same thing here too, probably. Well, what about the Big 12? We talked about a bunch of everywhere else. What's the Big 12 going for? The only thing that was said today, this came from a source to Brett McMurphy at Stadium. He said, quote, hypothetically hard, but not impossible. Hypothetically hard, but not impossible for Big 12 to play if the Big 10 and the Pac-12 and others cancel. Another source told him it would be really hard given what some, in quotes, of our medical directors are saying. That to me is like, so we've got some over here that are like, not doable. But then there's some over here that might be like, it's doable, you just got to do things in the right way, right? That doesn't help anybody. I mean, we were talking about uniform leadership here. So that's why you've got commissioners, presidents, ADs, players, and coaches right now are all on different sides of this. We have seen, to no other time can I remember, a whirlwind of everything going on at once like it is now in college sports, decisions not being made and still pending at the same time and arguing back and forth like we have. Yeah. It's unprecedented.
And here's, I meant to bring this up as well, and since you're talking about the Big 12 now, Chuck Carlton for the Dallas Morning News, who covers Big 12 athletics, this is a quote last night from Bob Bowlesby on the season outlook. Quote, we haven't made any decisions, I can tell you that. We're continuing to do what we've done. We're listening to doctors and scientists and continuing to prepare our season and prepare for the season. And yet the last 2 or 3 weeks have not been good for us. You'd be less than forthright if you didn't acknowledge between the myocarditis and some of the other things that are new. It hasn't raised the concern level, but nothing has been decided at this point.
Say that again now. What? Myocarditis?
Myocarditis. Basically, that's the disease, the heart disease people are coming down with. The Boston Red Sox ace is dealing with that.
See, and I've seen people. I understand this part too. Okay, that part of the reason you might get an actual look if somewhere in Kevin Warren's heart he truly does care about the health of student, which maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I don't know him that well, but if he did, maybe part of it is we don't know quite yet the long-term effects of this, but at the same time we do know the long-term effects of concussions and everything else, yet we still go out there. So that's why you're going to have back and forth on this the entire time. But with the backlash that has been received from people that I haven't heard a word from a lot of these people, okay? And what's crazy to me is I've seen a lot of people on social media this whole time not necessarily rooting for everything to stop and be canceled, but only sharing and writing articles about why it should or why we can't have this. And now all of a sudden, because the players have turned around and said, oh, yeah, we want to actually play, a lot of them are like, oh my gosh, I got to change my stance here and go, well, actually, maybe it does make sense if the players say it's okay, right? Because a lot of them have been basing it off of the players don't want to play. The players don't feel safe playing.
I'm just curious who. Like I know people have been saying that they've seen that, but I haven't. Like outside of Dan Walken, who always has the most extreme responses to everything anyway.
Yeah.
I haven't heard much because again, here's the thing, because that was something that pissed me off over the weekend. This whole argument that let's suddenly spin it on the sports media. The college football beat writers are rooting against it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of the listeners probably think with what I say, that's the same. You know what? We look at the data with sports. I mean, when it comes to dissecting numbers and data and researching and resources, sports journalists are one of the top ones of being able to look through, find trends, do that stuff. You know, the amount of times I've said over the past 6-7 months how Oklahoma State has lost the last 4 games to open up Big 12 play and got a response of really is baffling. But that's part of my job. And that's the thing is there's nothing positive to write about right now. That's the whole argument of why aren't you writing things positive? Okay, what's positive? Okay, the Harbaugh thing, people have been writing about, okay, these are the positive tests. Here in Oklahoma State, we haven't been able to write anything positive because there's no information coming out from the university.
That's the problem with places like here is that we don't know anything at this point. Enough people have pointed out, and look, I've been sent articles from a lot of people as well that know me or follow me or whatever on things. I think there's been a lot of big voices that have, again, maybe not rooting, but have a large enough following where if you consistently read stuff they write, it's like, do they want a season to happen?
And that's what, as a media person, it frustrates me that people, the casual readers or whatever, need to keep in mind. There's difference between college football beat writers and Dan Walken, Pat Forty, stuff like that. Those are national people. They're looking for clicks.
Those are the ones that I'm talking about.
And that's the problem, though, is so many people clump them in with me and Scott Wright and Jacob Unruh and Frank Bonner, not realizing that they can root for a season not being had because they're making millions. They don't care.
Right.
But myself and Scott and Frank Bonner, we know that if there's no season, that we could possibly lose our jobs.
Yeah, no, I think that because of, like I said, their platforms are so big, a lot of people assume, and they see it more and they hear it more, that they stand for everybody in the business, which isn't true. People like Dan Wolken, Peter Keene has been a big problem this entire time from what stuff I've read. He covers National Football League too, and apparently thinks he needs to write about college football at times. Go down.
He's also a blowhard. Well,
yeah. Mike Florio, who does Pro Football Talk this whole time.
He's always been
oh my
blowhard.
Gosh, has been absolutely. And that's what I'm saying is names like that,
right?
Where you go down and you see Darren Rovell, another one.
Yeah.
You just go down and you see that their stuff is put out there, and the reason why is because so many people this whole time that have bought into, because there are those people that have bought into the coronavirus is the end of everything.
Right.
They need their view to be confirmed, and they think that is a way to do it, which, again, it needs to be put out there, like you said. Just because they have bigger platforms, they don't stand for the sports media as a whole, because there are plenty on the other side that are trying to stay positive.
They stand for the 1% who can afford to see there be no sports.
Yeah. No, they will.
They're not going around because for me, during this entire pandemic, I've had to do stuff like cover news side, taking photos for news. Like I've had to be a journalist, not just a sports editor.
Right.
But Dan Walken, Pat Forty, they don't have to. I mean, heck, half the time Forty doesn't even write a story once a month, it seems like, and so they're fine with that. So that's the thing that people need to keep in mind is just because you hear those people saying that they're rooting for, or they don't think there's going to be a season, this, that, and the other, doesn't mean that myself or people at the smaller papers are having that same mentality. Because I know the reality if there's no football at Oklahoma State this fall, what it means for my job, what it means for my colleagues' jobs, But also outside of the news press, I also know what it means for the radio station.
Yeah.
I know what it means for, the Eskimo Joe's just up the street. I know what it means for this community. And people like Pat Forty and Dan Walken don't know what that. They can spout their numbers. Oh, the $2 billion coming in, but they don't see it because they're not here. They watch it on ESPN. They watch from their homes and then type up a column. They don't see what it actually does for the small communities, and I get that, but that's at the same time. I'm sure people are like, well, but I've been negative. It's like, no, I've been realistic.
Right.
The trending has been the wrong direction for us to have a season.
There has been,
but I'm not rooting for it to not happen.
There has been some of the politicians have come out and tried to tie it back to, which is important as well, like you just said, and maybe too. If it's possible, small businesses around here in places that will absolutely be in trouble if there's no college football need to make their voices heard too. Of like, look, our livelihood depends on this. A lot of this depends on if we have a college football season. That needs to be taken into account. That's why I think people are so immediately against what the Big Ten was talking about. Was let's also think about all these other lives that will be affected by this that don't directly tie to.
But that's part of the problem. In our society, even before the pandemic, is people don't think outside themselves. There's a reason that, because that's the crazy thing. Right now, there is a mask mandate, right, in Stillwater. If you want to go into a store, you're supposed to wear a mask.
Yeah.
They tried to implement that back in May, and there was so much pushback that they had to shut it down. You actually had a Stillwater citizen calling the police department, threatening them with violence just because of a mask. Mm-hmm. And here we are. 3 months later, now everyone has to still wear the mask. If we would have taken care of that back in May, those early steps, maybe we aren't in this situation. That's the problem, is people can't think beyond themselves in their own little bubble right now and realizing that their actions have consequences.
Yeah.
And whether it's wearing a mask or if it's a Louisville athlete hosting a party.
I'm glad you brought that up because I love this topic here. First of all, phone lines are open if you want to jump in, 533-1020, 533-1020, 405 area codes. Multiple schools have actually addressed the whole partying situation. Texas, University of Texas says parties on or off campus put the health and safety of community at risk and raise anxiety levels. No parties on or off campus are allowed. They said on or off campus. So I'm thinking, how do they mandate a party that's off campus?
Yeah. Especially if it's just a general public student, not an athlete.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know what I thought was, I wonder if around the Arlington area they are in talks and have been close with the local law enforcement, and it is, hey, when you go bust up a party, check IDs, find out if there's some student IDs, report it back to us. We'll address it and say, hey, it's public record that you got in trouble for throwing a party. And now we can kick you, or something like that, So that was the first one I thought was interesting. Yale is asking students, asking students to sign their Yale Community Compact. It includes a no party pledge and a commitment to getting the flu shot. No one knows yet what will happen if anyone doesn't sign the compact. But what you say you will do is, if you sign it, you will follow protocols. You will neither host or participate in any gathering that exceeds the protocol limits, which is 15 people. You will be vaccinated with the flu. When they actually, this is kind of scary to me. When you sign this, expected to go get the flu vaccine.
Right.
Okay. That one's like, some people are like, wait a minute. Cornell has said that you are prohibited against inviting guests and family members to help people move in.
Right. I saw
that's going to be strange.
Over the weekend, I saw a story where Nebraska actually paid for a third-party company to come in and move people in.
I thought I read that too.
To try to limit the exposure as well.
Yeah, that's look. We've both been there, and a lot of people have too. That's like your goodbye to your family, your parents.
Oh yeah,
and that's also the parents getting to go. You know what? Feel accomplished.
Yeah,
my kid's going off to college. Feel like I did a good job.
Right.
So that getting taken away from them is.
But I will say
terrible.
I will at the same time say though, it would have been nice not to have to drag and fortunately I was only on the 3rd floor, but I mean, because I remember when I was moving in, seeing some people couldn't even wait for the elevator because, it's such a long line. So they're lugging up, recliners to the 9th floor and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, just make someone else do it and I can just chillax with my family. We can go to the local restaurant or something.
It makes me think of, I heard somebody talk about this over the weekend and I was like, yeah, it was true. But they're talking about, the topic was college kids partying on campus and student athletes. And it was like, look, we know we've all talked about it. We've all been there and done it. But think about how quickly it actually took place, right? In a college year, your parents do the whole drop-off thing. It's bye-bye. You're a freshman at a university. And that's your first real moment of freedom.
Yep.
You realize that night you don't have to go when your parents say, and then curfew.
I don't have to be home by 10.
You can do what you want.
Lights off by 11.
An hour after you're unpacked, a beer's in your hand and you're ready to go. I mean, I thought that topic was funny. This one, it kind of brings up right here perfectly with what Penn is telling their students. They said that in a compact, by enrolling a student this year, you agree to adhere to expectations for physical distancing and public behavior detailed below, which is to acknowledge that drinking alcohol and using other drugs will increase my risk of engaging in risky behavior and or needing medical treatment, including the risk of being exposed to higher risk contact with others. Alcohol consumption and recreational drug use will not be considered an excuse for unauthorized, risky COVID-19 related behavior. They actually said that you have to sign this and acknowledge by signing this that alcohol will make you result in riskier behavior.
Where are those amendment warriors saying, oh, you can't take my guns? What about letting kids be kids?
Yeah, this is... I have to think that even if they sign it, like
no one's taking it seriously.
There's plenty of people that are like, forget that. I'm here at college. I'm going to do a college. Look, and that's what I'm saying. When we let these kids come back, fine. But what I don't want to hear, and that includes Oklahoma State, anybody coming out from any university and going, oh my gosh, this was completely unexpected. We had this compact in place, or we had these guidelines in place, and now we have to shut down.
Yeah.
Don't be feeding me that when we all knew it was coming.
Because, for example, up at Oklahoma State's campus right now, in most buildings, there's signage. This is an entrance door. This is an exit door. This is a going upstairs stairwell. This is a going downstairs stairwell. And I haven't been on there with a mass amount of kids on campus yet. Like we're going to see throughout this year and starting this week and then into next week. But just within a handful of people, I've seen people walking through the exit door. Like there's signs that literally say, this is an exit only, and people still walk through it.
There's something about being young and defying.
Let's also
basic.
Just remember, and this may sound stupid, but this is how this sums it all up. How many times have you gone to a Walmart and walked through where it says entrance, and people are leaving through there?
Hey, I'll admit it. I'm guilty. I've done it before.
Exactly.
And you know what? I walked through and I probably went, look at that.
Yeah. So how are we really expecting 18, 19-year-olds out getting freedom for the first time to abide by every single piece of paper they read and sign?
It kind of, the one that got me again was Texas, thinking they have jurisdiction outside of their campus. It's like, what?
Yeah, I don't know how that's
I'm not sure how that one's supposed to work. All right, when we come back, we're going to switch gears. If you want, you can call in. We'll get back to your college football talk, concerns, anything like that. We have Major League Baseball news as well. Cardinals continue to screw everything up. We had a fight this weekend, an actual fight in Major League Baseball. It wasn't social distanced, and it did involve the Houston Astros. That's next. Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Ohnquist actually watching video of what we're about to talk about. and that is the actual brawl that took place in Major League Baseball. I remember before this started this year, I said that we would have a lot of punishments come down if we had an actual brawl. Why did I say that? Because of social distancing, because of all those issues, and I have to think there's going to be a lot of fines handed out here because that was actually broken. We got in the face. We saw some actual fights. We'll talk about that here in a minute. First, let's go to the phone lines. You're on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Go ahead.
Okay, I do want to talk about the fight here in a second.
Okay.
But I do want to go back to what you were talking about before the break.
Yep.
Anytime you read some story and the main part of the story is presented by some liberal pansy attorney, it's always somebody from Harvard Law School. So it's, how crazy is that all these Ivy League schools are saying you can't do this and you can't do that, and that's all of those people that they're training to, how do you guys put it, the cancel culture? It is 100% created and backed, and the definition of all that stuff comes from those people.
I would think that there's a certain look. I would be crazy to not think that there isn't some agendas at some schools at some parts of the nation that probably influence in one way or the other, and maybe some that do it the opposite way. But to your point, so you're talking about articles that were written, you said by Harvard lawyers. Is that what you said?
Yeah, just Harvard Law School attorneys that graduate from Harvard Law School are the ones that come up with all these. You can't make anybody do this. You can't have anybody do that. And then they turn around when it's convenient for them and say, oh, well, you have to do this or you have to do that. And now they're telling their students what, really breaking down a lot of their freedoms or their, the liberty or to be able to do what they want. It's just ridiculous, the stuff that they throw out there. I mean, they will say something and then turn around and do the exact opposite thing or vice versa. The people involved with those Ivy League schools is what I'm talking about.
I'll just chime in and say everyone does that. Let's be honest. Literally everyone does that.
Yeah, but it seems like they have a louder voice than most. I mean, you're right. I totally agree. Everyone does that, but it just seems like they have a louder voice, or maybe it's because they did graduate from a prestigious school. People listen a lot.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that plays into it.
Yeah, because they would be considered, quote, better sources than a lawyer from NEO or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, as far as the fight goes, and I know that you guys don't get into it more, but when y'all got into the colorful argument with Mr. Tom Dorado about the Astros last week, I'm with Tom on some things, I'm with you guys on others, but I was probably more leaning to being with you guys on that because they're the ones that were throwing at the other team in this situation.
Right.
They're the ones that instigated it. They're the ones that initiated it.
Even the bench coach initiated the ultimate brawl. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They are. You want to just talk about a bunch of punks.
Yep.
And the reason why every team that they play should be tossing chin music at those guys, and that's where I agree with you guys instead of Tom in this one instance, is because when they did what they did, they not only did, I mean, you can do it, and you're like, okay, yeah, fine, we cheated, we got away with it, we won the World Series, blah, blah, blah. But they did it, and then they rubbed everybody's noses in.
Right. And that's the point that I made to Tom, is that why so many people also have an issue with it, is there was no remorse.
Right.
You saw the initial press conference afterwards, and it was like, yeah, we lost a couple of people here, fired or whatever, but we got away with this and we know it. And on top of that, what made things worse was like Carlos Correa coming out and saying, don't talk about this, shut the F up if you don't know what you're talking about. All these players backing up everything that they did. Like, no, that was the time to admit your wrongdoings, and that would maybe have helped a little bit. You still would have had to face the music because the commissioner didn't punish you. But the fact that you're going to actually make matters worse by rubbing salt in the wound and saying, yeah, so what? We got away with it, big deal. Like, that is 100% incentive for these other players to go after you.
I think the best response I saw from the brawl this weekend was somebody saying that Manford just issued another 8-game suspension to Joe Kelly.
Well, and the way I look at it with the way the Astros mentality and attitude was going back to the cheating was it was just if you think about it, it was a lot like free when they were paying a ton of money to those players, and also had a lot of illegal activities going with the players that were being hidden or brushed under the rug or whatever you want to say, and then Hugh Freeze had the audacity to go, hey, I'm a great person. Look at me. Hey, if Gundy has a problem with our team, then he just needs to become better. He's just maybe just not good enough. And the whole time he knew all of the stuff that was going on. He knew he was cheating. And then when all the stuff came out, then how did he look when he said, oh, he was sitting there going, well, you're just not good enough. You're just whining, because it's like, no, we're playing a professional football team. That's unfair.
Yeah.
And anyway, and that's kind of what the Astros did. I mean, the situation was different, but the way Hugh Freeze rubbed it in Gundy's nose in Oklahoma State, well, you're just not good enough, and you're whining about it. No, you're cheating all over the field in so many ways we can't even count. But anyway, the Astros did the same thing. They cheated, and then they just laughed at everybody like, hey, just get better. You're just whining because no, I mean, you're cheating, and that's why you have the advantage.
Yeah, and that was what made, I think, matters worse in the future as well for these guys. Anybody and people coming in too that are new to the Astros. Like, it would have been one thing, first of all, had they been punished correctly. You might have had this year to get back at them, and everybody gets back at them, and then it's all done and said and done. You go into the next year, it's not forgotten, but it's probably put on the back burner, right? New season, maybe we got what we wanted in last year. But now that happened, that the punishment wasn't correct, but on top of it, like I just said, they came out and basically defended what they did in a lot of ways. That has black-marked this organization for the inevitable future.
Well, and shouldn't it for the players? I mean, if you are, let's say one of them gets to free agency.
Yeah, no matter where you go.
Would you actually want your team, even if you think that he's a talented guy, want him in your locker room?
Yeah,
because you know that he's cheated and got away with it and had no remorse?
Not even that, but the heat that would come from other teams brought onto your club because you had that certain player, whether it be Correa, Bregman, Altuve, you name it down the list of that guys that were found out to be cheating. Yeah, it'd be a real issue.
Yeah, and you guys were 100% right when you were talking about the fact that these guys were basically getting in the faces of other players of other teams, and the way I said, was rubbing their noses in it. And now you expect those guys, especially now that we know the truth, and it's a no brainer, no doubter. No, I mean, that's why I think all these teams do it. But the fact that they go out and they're the ones that initiated this weekend. Yeah. I'm just like,
yeah.
I mean, it's like, I mean, the fact that they didn't learn anything is one thing, but the fact that they just don't care. I mean, they have absolutely no remorse and don't care. Every team they face, every pitcher that goes up there needs to be, sending them a message, in my opinion, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If they're supposed to police themselves,
yeah.
If a guy commits one act against another guy, that happens. People go, okay, it happens, and then they're gone. Well, you're talking about this is the way they performed on a consistent basis. So the way you get back at that is getting it handed to you on a consistent basis, in my opinion.
Yeah, ultimately, I think the word we're all trying to look for is Manford's basically enabled them. He's an enabler.
Yeah.
It's okay. You cheated the sport. No penalty.
Yeah.
Oh, Joe Kelly threw at you guys. No penalty. So it's like they just feel like they can get away with whatever they want because they've never been punished for anything.
They know they're fine with it. Yeah.
Well, and it certainly doesn't. Baseball has had some. I mean, the commissioners of baseball have been really bad for decades.
Yeah.
And now, what you guys just said. What happens when the next team wants to do something, if they find a way of doing something that's illegal or cheating or however you want to put it, to gain an advantage? there's no reason for them not to do it. So you're messing with the integrity of the game, and it's coming from the top.
Yep.
Is it sad to say right now that I would almost rather have Bud Selig back than Manfred?
I would take Bud Selig
Manfred
back.
Is that bad?
I would take him back in a heartbeat now.
That is pretty sad.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, appreciate
Thanks for the phone call.
No, it's true. I mean, based off how Rob Manfred has handled everything.
I would take a guy who literally ended an All-Star game in a tie.
Yeah.
Over Manfred.
Wasn't it great when those were the least of Major League Baseball's problems?
Right. Well, and then we made All-Star games matter.
Yeah, right.
Like all of that was confusing and stupid enough, but I would still take that back over.
Oh,
this schmo.
So let's get into the fight here a little bit. It was an actual brawl. Okay, we saw some swings.
Yeah, this wasn't socially distanced.
No, this
yelling.
wasn't the A's Astros Dodgers where they, hey, let's separate. No, this was you had the charge of, never heard of this guy, by the way, Ramon Laureano, and that's kind of my point here.
Apparently is their best, the A's best player.
I hadn't heard of him. I don't pay a ton of attention to the A's, but I know some of their players. Never heard of him. But he is also, in my opinion here, he saw another opportunity, right? Joe Kelly, more people knew him first of all, but now he's the hero of baseball this year. Well, Ramon got thrown at, and he said to himself,
No, correction, got thrown at three times in a series.
Yeah. He finally said, first of all, probably would have done it anyways, right, with that many times, but also said to himself, hey, this is my opportunity. I'm going to be the next Joe Kelly.
I would disagree, because if you watch it, he went to first, bickering with the dugout because they were on the Astros dugout down the first base line, but it was the moment that bench coach stepped up, started chopping back, and then threw the come at me, bro.
Yeah.
And then even did like a flinch, that bro flex of, I got my whole team, come get me, bro. That's when it snapped. That's when he goes, I am tired of this. I'm tired of you guys. I'm coming at you.
So maybe he was restraining himself at first.
Yeah.
At that time, he's like, had enough. Here's a shot. Because the best tweet I saw after it was a picture of Mount Rushmore, and it had Joe Kelly, and it had this guy's face on it, and it said who's going to be next by the time the season ends, because these guys are now heroes to everybody else.
Because if I were the commissioner, obviously you'd have to give Laureano a couple games. I'd give him maybe 3, 4. But the bench coach, I'd say at least, heck, if I were the commissioner, he's done for the year.
Oh my!
Because of the pandemic and everything going on, obviously the bad press you're getting with the Cardinals and the Marlins, all this stuff, other stuff. He was the spark that sent it into this chaos that you did not need.
The reason that I had the issue with this was because the only good thing about everything that's going on with the Cardinals and all this is we haven't seen any spread from team to team.
Yeah, that might change.
If we get reports that there has been spread from the A's to the Astros because of this, that's where you start having a real issue. Because by now, if there had been reports that the Cardinals had found a way to get it to the Cubs or Brewers or whatever, or the Marlins had put it on the Phillies, then we might not be playing baseball right now. So this is the only thing that worries me about that. Just like you said, he enticed it. Now, Laureano probably should have found a way to hold back, but at the same time, we're not going to fault him for it. So this was an actual brawl. The videos, you can go find it. Punches are thrown, guys tackling. They're all in a group on the ground. It was funny. It was a dog pile. It's funny to see some of the guys pull up their masks before they got in the fight. But here's the thing. I think it almost is a good thing, not from the guidelines being broken, but just that maybe we're seeing. Look, if again, back to Rob Manfred being at fault here. If he's not going to punish, I don't care what's going on. Baseball will find a way to make things right. Right? I think that's kind of what it was. So in a way, I respect that. At the same time, Rob Manfred has the chance here to. I know he's not good at sending the right message.
He has never set a proper precedent.
Right.
In anything.
This right here, if he handed out lengthy suspensions to whoever was involved here by inciting, we strictly said no brawls. and you all participated in a brawl, well, you got a shortened season anyway. Here goes a chunk of that. So he has a chance to do that. Would I be surprised if the wrong punishments are handed out or whatever? Not at all, because it's Rob Manfred. But this is, I think it was good to kind of see just some normalcy. I hope that we don't see a spread amongst teams, because we're going to have a real issue, and we'll talk more about that when we come back, because the Cardinals it's just an unmitigated disaster with the St. Louis Cardinals right now, and it continues to get worse, because I got an update about the series.
Did they play last night? I mean, ESPN hyped it up on Friday.
Yeah, remember that? We were sitting there, and we saw the ad, and we're like, I wonder if that's going to last, and no, it didn't.
Yeah.
And it just kind of keeps getting worse, because St. Louis hasn't played since July 29th, and it looks like it's going to be almost a month. Very close to them not getting played.
Before we go to break, more news coming from Brett McMurphy. Mountain West cancels fall football season because of COVID player health and safety concerns, sources have told Stadium.
Oh, so they're going to go back and say to their guys, you threatened not to play, well, now you don't get to.
Yeah. League says it will consider playing in the spring. So now we are at 2 FBS conferences that will not be playing this season. That brings total to 26 FBS programs that are not going to be playing.
Wow, yeah. Another domino.
Yep.
Another domino down. When we come back, we'll give a Cardinals update. That's next.
Yeah, that's what I've been on. Yeah, that's what I've been on. Yeah, that's what I've been on. Yeah, that's what...
Welcome back. Afternoon Sports Drive, wrapping it up here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. It's Patrick Wheeler. It's Jason Elmquist. And my head has just been exploding over this whole Cardinals situation, as I'm sure many people around St. Louis has been the same way. 10 reported positive tests now after Lane Thomas is the latest. I don't know if that was spread to him or if he was screwing around, and the Cardinals are just not taking it serious. I mean, I said this, bottom line, it's really put a black mark on the organization. You know, an organization that's known for doing things the right way, and that includes with their players and staff. Well, this has really, really turned things around, I think, to the view of a lot of people. Their entire series this week against the Pirates was already canceled. Now, as in 15 minutes ago, the doubleheader versus the Tigers on Thursday have been postponed. So that leads you up until the 13th now. There's going to be at least until no baseball.
So how many games to date have been postponed for the Cardinals?
I'll have to go look again to be sure, because I think I saw the number of, for instance, it was like 55 games in 46 days that they were going to have to play to make everything up, is what I saw, something like that. The unbalance is just insane how much baseball they're going to have to play to have a full season. So I think they've missed, up to 20 plus, possibly 20 games now, close to it. And I'm afraid to say counting. They need to get past this, whatever outbreak is going on. But at the same time, I've heard Tom made the argument earlier, and I told him, because I made this argument with the Marlins. It was a show that I did, I think Robert's show by myself when all that was going on, and I made the argument, look, is it crazy to come down as a real punishment here and tell the Marlins, if found out that you're screwing around and putting yourself in high-risk situations, that we'll just give you losses. We'll make you forfeit the games. And people were like, you're crazy, you can't blame that on there's a coronavirus, like they got it, like you can't. I'm like,
if they went out of their way,
we found out they went out of their way.
Yeah.
So to me, that justifies it. Now people, since the Cardinals have missed so many games and so many other teams, the Brewers, the Cubs, the Pirates, and the Tigers have now been affected. 4 other teams have now been affected here.
Yeah.
Well, why isn't it? I mean, to me, and I'm a biggest Cardinals fan you'll ever find, give them losses. Like if it's found out that it was an asymptomatic case that was willingly brought in, okay, because that's what what Schultz said was, we believe it's an asymptomatic carrier that infiltrated inside the team somehow. Well, if they can trace that back, I would feel like they would be able to.
Right.
Then they could find that out. If it's true, the whole casino thing has kind of been debunked according to management and ownership of the Cardinals, so that's kind of out of there. But it did come from somewhere, and I have to believe it didn't just start circulating in the clubhouse with all the protections in place too. So somebody went out, did something, or multiple people, and got it in and brought it into the clubhouse. If it's found out, I'm all for it. I think the punishments need to come down hard here, but this really is unacceptable. I mean, the fact that they haven't played since July 29th. We're sitting here on August 10th. Okay, it's going to be close to a month before they get back into baseball play. Yeah. This is unbelievable. I mean, I really haven't ever seen anything like this, and especially never thought it would be the Cardinals out of all teams that would pull something like this, right? I mean, it's really unbelievable. So that's where you are with that. You're going to have to wait a while. It's been a tough time for St. Louis sports fans. The Blues lost their third game. They are now so they started out as the number 1 seed in the West coming into the round robin play. Well, they're entering now as the 4th seed because they lost all their games before the actual playoffs start tomorrow. So there you go for that too. It's been a rough time. But I do have to give credit, baseball so far, right? They've pretty much contained it everywhere else. Marlins and the Cardinals are kind of your examples, your issues. I think last checked it was like 13 total tests positive, and most of those were St. Louis. So you didn't really have a huge issue. So, we're sitting here on August 10th. We're still having a season. If you remember when the whole Marlins thing started, everyone was like, we're not going to have a season. They're going to have to shut it down, right? So we're doing a good job, I think, with that. Kind of playing into it here. Zach Plesac pitches for the Indians. He went out and partied. It was found out. Now he's not allowed to travel with the team wherever they're going now. They're not happy, obviously. He admitted that it happened. But look, I mean, so that to me also is going to be the case if in college football. If it's found out that your players are partying or whatever, or out doing this, you find out, but like, you're not traveling with us, first of all, right? Right. Possibility of even getting kicked off the team. I mean, Louisville played that. That's
going to have to be a worry, though, for coaches and presidents and ADs. If you find out that somebody went to or hosted a party and you don't find out for a week or so, well, then do you need to quarantine everyone for the fear that maybe he spread it to other teammates, so you don't want to risk it? Like, I think if you weren't having to deal with young adults, pre-21, then maybe I would be feeling a little more comfortable. But the fact that we're literally seeing mid-20s being paid millions of dollars just to stay in a hotel, can't even do that.
Well, it's also the amount of people. Like your percentage, your odds just increase. Oh, certainly. Right, with football players. Certainly. This just came in regarding the Laureano fight. He says that what spurred the fight was that Astros coach Alex Cintron made a comment to Laureano regarding his mother. So I'm having to think that Cintron probably said, hey,
a yo mama joke.
Yo mama. It was a classic yo mama joke, and he took offense, and that was he talked about my mama, and he came after him, right? So that's kind of like a classic ending right there to that whole brawl. Okay, we'll leave it with this too. The ACC, right? They said that last we checked, they're planning on moving forward right now with the college football season. Right. At least they haven't voted on it yet, but planning on doing that soon.
But could potentially also meet today again. So, I think everyone said it, most of the big wigs said over the weekend, we'll know by week's end what if we're going to have a season or not.
Yeah, I would think this week is going to be very, very telling. Even by tomorrow, it's very possible we could know before we come on air whether the Big Ten or Pac-12 will ultimately play. And with the way news breaks all day, we could have more on Power 5s as well. So we'll be watching out for that and much more going on tomorrow. This has been the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. That's Jason Elmquist. I'm Patrick Wheeler. Thanks for hanging out with us. Doug Gottlieb is next. We'll be back tomorrow.